The town of Hawthorne Ridge had a habit of forgetting things. People forgot to lock their doors. They forgot strangers' faces. They forgot yesterday's news by the time the sun went down. It wasn't stupidity, it was comfort. Nothing bad ever happened here, so there was no reason to remember danger. On an October morning in 1987, Evan Miller sat alone in the corner booth of the Hawthorne Diner. Stirring sugar into black coffee he didn't need sweetened. He had already memorized the road ahead, the miles of silence waiting for him beyond town limits. When he left a tip and smiled at the waitress, she smiled back without knowing it would be the last time anyone would remember his face clearly. He stepped outside, the bell above the door ringing once, sharp and clean. Then nothing. No one heard a scream. No one saw a struggle. His name simply stopped being spoken. Weeks passed, then months. People said he probably ran off, found a better life, decided not to tell anyone. The police filled out paperwork, stamped dates, and moved on. The town exhaled. When Harold Green disappeared during his evening walk, the air shifted just slightly. His shoes were found near the cornfield, placed side by side, toes facing the road. That detail sat quietly in a report file, unread by anyone who mattered. Marcus Hill vanished next. His car abandoned at a gas station with the engine cold and the keys still in place. That was when whispers replaced excuses. 3 men don't simply vanish, but Hawthorne Ridge still slept. Daniel Cross lived at the edge of town, where the pavement ended and the dirt began. He woke every morning at exactly 6. He ate the same breakfast. He spoke only when spoken to. People trusted him because he was invisible. He fixed broken sinks at the school. He changed light bulbs in hallways where children laughed too loudly. He smiled politely and never stayed long enough to be remembered. Inside his house, there were no photographs, no souvenirs, no proof that time had ever touched him. Everything had its place. Everything was clean. The calendar on his wall remained blank, because dates mattered only to people who were expected somewhere. Daniel believed some people were already gone before they disappeared. Detective Laura Bennett arrived from the state police carrying too many questions and not enough patience. She didn't like towns that explained everything away. She didn't like roads that swallowed men whole. She especially didn't like silence that felt practiced. She drove the highway herself, watching cornfields ripple like something alive beneath the wind. She imagined how easy it would be to pull over, to trust a stranger, to step into the wrong moment. Back at the diner, she listened more than she spoke. That's how she learned about Daniel. Quiet, polite, always watching the road. She saw him the same day, sitting near the window, coffee untouched, eyes following a lone man walking toward his car. There was no emotion on Daniel's face. No hunger. No anger. Only certainty. Laura felt it then, the feeling she had learned never to ignore. The sense that something terrible had already happened, and was about to happen again. That night, Daniel drove the highway alone. Headlights cutting through darkness that felt familiar. He didn't rush. He never did. The men he chose were always the same type. Drifting. Unnoticed. Already halfway. Gone. He believed he was doing the world a favor, somewhere between Hawthorne Ridge and nowhere at all. Another car slowed, and the road stayed quiet the next morning. The town woke up the same way it always did. Coffee brewed. Doors opened. Radios hummed with local news that carried no urgency. Hawthorne Ridge believed the night had passed without consequence. But a hunter walking the tree line beyond the old service road felt it before he saw it. The air was wrong thick, metallic, silent in a way nature never was. He followed the smell first, then the flies. When his eyes finally registered what lay between the trees, his body reacted before his mind could. He dropped to his knees and void, for the first time. Hawthorne Ridge had a body. The man had been arranged carefully, almost respectfully, hands crossed, eyes closed. No struggle frozen into his posture, only a single bullet wound beneath the jaw, clean and precise. The kind of wound made by someone who didn't hesitate, Detective Laura Bennett stood over the scene an hour later, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. She didn't need to be told this wasn't random. Nothing about it felt rushed. This was someone who wanted control, who wanted the final moment to be quiet. She noticed the shoes immediately, placed neatly beside the body. Her stomach tightened. Back in town, news spread fast. Faster than anyone expected. Fear doesn't ask permission before it moves. Doors locked earlier that night. Porch lights stayed on. Conversations dropped to whispers. Daniel Cross listened to the radio in his kitchen, spoon tapping softly against his mug as the report played. His expression didn't change. He had expected this. Eventually, something always surfaced. That was the nature of order. You clean long enough, and someone notices what's missing. He rinsed his cup and placed it upside down to dry. Laura worked through the night. She spread photographs across her motel bed again, but this time there was a center point. The body, the shoes, the bullet. She began drawing circles, connecting locations, marking times. Patterns emerged when you stopped. Pretending they weren't there, every disappearance happened within 20 miles of Hawthorne Ridge. Every victim was alone. Every timeline crossed the same stretch of road. She requested records, traffic stops, employment logs, maintenance schedules. She didn't know what she was looking for yet, only that the answer was small, local, and hiding in plain sight. The next day, she visited the school. Daniel was fixing a sink when she approached him. He turned calmly, wiping his hands on a cloth, eyes steady. To steady, Daniel Cross. She asked, yes. She introduced herself. He nodded, polite, cooperative. The kind of man officers trusted without realizing why. She asked routine questions. Where he'd been certain nights. Whether he noticed strangers. If he ever picked up hitchhikers. No, he said gently. Too dangerous. She watched his face as he spoke. Nothing moved. No flicker. No hesitation. It unsettled her more than a lie would have. That night, Daniel drove again. Not because he needed to, but because stopping would mean thinking. And thinking led to doubt. He had rules. Rules kept the noise away. He picked up a man just past the county line. Younger this time. Nervous. Grateful. The kind who talked to, much because silence frightened him. Daniel listened. When the moment came, it was over quickly. Back in Hawthorne Ridge. Laura received the call before dawn. Another body. This one wasn't arranged. This one had been interrupted, tire. Tracks cut sharp through the dirt. A rushed shot. The shoes still on. A mistake. Laura stood at the edge of the scene, staring at the tracks. Whoever did this was careful, but not invincible. Pressure changed things. Pressure forced people to rush. She knew that feeling. Daniel felt it too. For the first time in years, his routine cracked. He cleaned longer than necessary. He checked the locks twice. He stood at his window longer than usual, watching the road as if it might stare back. He told himself it was temporary. That order could be restored, but something had shifted. Laura requested surveillance near the highway. Gas stations, ATMs, anywhere someone might appear without realizing they were being recorded. Hours of footage played across her screen, faces blurring together. Then she saw him, not clearly. Not enough for certainty, but enough. The quiet man from the diner. The maintenance worker. Always nearby, always unnoticed. Daniel Cross. She ran his background, clean to clean. No family, no photos, no anchors. People like that either disappeared completely or stayed behind for a reason. She returned to Hawthorne Ridge unannounced and parked near Daniel's house just after sunset. She watched him leave, headlights cutting into the dark. She followed at a distance. The road stretched endlessly, familiar and empty. Daniel drove with confidence, never checking his mirrors. He didn't know he was no longer alone. When he slowed near the turnoff, Laura's breath caught. This was it. The moment everything had been leading toward. She watched him pull over. She stopped too. Far enough back to stay unseen. A car passed. Then another minute stretched. Daniel waited. Then he got out. Laura stepped from her vehicle, gun raised, heart hammering. Her voice cut through the night, loud and sharp, breaking the silence he depended on. Daniel Cross. Don't move. He froze. For the first time, his certainty shattered. He turned slowly, eyes meeting hers under the wash of headlights. There was no anger there, no fear, only disappointment. As if something precious had been interrupted, he raised his hands. The road stayed. Quiet, and Hawthorne Ridge finally remembered how to breathe again. Daniel lowered himself to his knees without being told. The gravel pressed into his pants, but he didn't flinch. His hands stayed raised, steady, almost graceful, as if he had rehearsed this moment in his head and found it acceptable. Laura approached carefully, weapon trained on him, every instinct screaming that quiet men were the most dangerous when cornered. When she cuffed him, he exhaled, not in relief. In resignation, the drive back into town felt longer than it ever had. The road that once swallowed men now carried them both, silent and tense. Daniel stared out the window, watching darkness peel away into familiar shapes. Houses, fields, the diner sign glowing like nothing had changed. At the station, word spread fast. Officers who had known Daniel for years avoided his eyes. Some stared too long, trying to reconcile the man they trusted with the weight of what followed him into the room. Laura sat across from him in the interrogation room. A single table, 2 chairs, a recorder blinking red. Why them? She asked quietly. Daniel folded his hands, fingers aligning perfectly. They were already leaving, he said. I just helped them finish. Laura didn't interrupt. She had learned that silence could be sharper than questions. They had no one, he continued. No one who would really notice. The world didn't change without them. You saw that? Her jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that. He looked at her then. Truly looked. Someone always does. Hours passed. Confessions came not with drama, but with methodical clarity. Names, places, dates. He spoke as if reciting maintenance logs. The gun. The road. The rules he followed to keep everything clean. When she asked if he felt remorse, he paused for the first time. I felt peace, he said, until you interrupted. The trial months later packed the courthouse with people who swore they had never noticed Daniel before. They studied his face like it might explain something about themselves. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a man who fixed sinks and kept to himself. That unsettled them more than guilt ever could. Families spoke. Photos were held up. Voices shook. Daniel listened without expression. When it was his turn, he declined to speak. The verdict came back guilty on all counts as he was led away. Daniel glanced once toward the gallery, then toward Laura, not in anger, not in hatred, in acknowledgement. Years passed. Hawthorne Ridge changed small things. Streetlights were added. Patrols increased. Doors stayed locked longer than they used to. People remembered Laura transferred out, but sometimes late at night, she still drove long roads and thought about how quiet evil could be. How easily it blended in. How many times it sat beside you in a diner and waited. Daniel Cross died in prison, alone, without ceremony. No final statement. No audience. Just silence, the same silence he had always trusted. The road outside Hawthorne Ridge still stretches on, empty and dark. Cars still break down. People still travel alone. And every now and then, someone wonders how many stories never end with sirens, only with absence.